So, hi, I'm Jo. Welcome to our podcast today. I'm part of the Royal Aeronautical Society Women in Aviation, Aerospace and Space Committee. Um, in my day job, I work in exec search, serving the same sectors. As part of my commitment to the committee, I host a podcast called Formidable Females to encourage more women to consider exciting careers in these sectors. In this very special episode today, we're going to be talking about job sharing. I'm delighted to be joined by Annelies Locke and Chris White Horne. Together, they are Deputy CEOs of the UK Space Agency. We're going to learn from them how job sharing can work in strategic leadership roles in such an important government agency. Annalise and Chris will share what they have learnt from each other as job share partners, whether there have been any challenges to overcome, and what the benefits of these arrangements have been, both to their own lives and to the organisation. We'll finish with some practical advice for anybody thinking about job sharing. So, first of all, Chris, can you tell me a bit about the UK Space Agency? What do you do here and why is it important?
Thank you, and it's such an honour to be on a podcast that's going to talk about formidable females, and I'm feeling slightly out of my depth already. But thank you so much, Joe, for having us on the podcast. Yes, at the UK Space Agency, we sort of do what it says on the tin. We're here to do space on behalf of the UK. We're part of the UK government. We're part of the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. And what Annalise and I do is also work across government to make sure that we pull together as one government, because space is fundamentally important to our lives. If you're watching this podcast, you've used space already. You don't know it. You don't need to know it. But if you've done a financial transaction today, if you've watched a weather forecast, if you've navigated somewhere using Google Maps, and then all the unhidden things, unseen things, sorry, that underpin our society, like our national infrastructure, they rely on things like precision timing signals, which come from space. So we are all in our day-to-day lives a consumer of services from space, which makes our work really important. But also, it's an issue of national security. So not only does space drive economic growth in the country, and I'll tell you a bit in a minute about our really thriving space sector, space is now a congested environment and a contested environment, and there are actors who would look to interfere with our way of life by interfering with services from space. So it's a really important mixture of driving economic growth and the nation's national security. Just to bring it to life, the space sector in the UK is big and it's growing. There's 1,900 organisations who work in space, companies and so on in the UK. 55,500 people are employed, and it brings in £18 billion a year of revenue to the UK. We are, in global terms, though, a relatively small player. The global space market is expanding enormously through the commercialization of space, but also the things that people like Elon Musk have done to reduce the barriers of entry. Things like the cost of launch has just plummeted in the last few years, meaning that it's no longer the preserve of very well-funded government space agencies to do stuff in space. Almost anybody can now, and we're seeing that. So we're really excited to be part of that and carve in the UK's niche in that really exciting, growing market.
Brilliant. Yes, it certainly is a thriving sector, and I can see its value both economically and in terms of security. And indeed, it's a brilliant place for people to build a career. Um, Annalise, could you tell me a little bit about your role as Deputy CEO? What do you find that you're doing day to day, and also your longer term objectives?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, thank you, Joe, for having us along today. It's really privileged to be here. And yeah, Chris and I are the Deputy Chief Executive and Chief Delivery Officer of the UK Space Agency. And over the last 12 months, we've also been the Director of Space within the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. So we're accountable for strategy, policy and delivery for civilian space across government, and working with our colleagues across government. We are seeking to deliver on the government's ambitions to drive up economic growth and national security.
Fabulous. And how did this job sharing arrangement come about? And it's obviously atypical to find deputy CEOs in a job share arrangement. How long have you been doing this, and what's the story behind it?
Gosh, so it was one of those serendipity moments. So Chris was part time already. He was a 4 days a week part time because he's a trombone instructor on a Monday. Whereas I was working full time, and at the time I was working in test and trace during COVID-19, and I was working pretty long hours, and I was asked to move across to set up the hotel quarantine service for people coming back from red list countries. And the Cabinet Office sent Chris in my direction to take over for me in the job. And we were talking about the job, and Chris was like, "Do you think I could do it as a part time worker?" And I was like, I'm working 15, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. It's not possible. Anyway, we had a conversation about it. And I think just out of pure exhaustion, I said to him, "But if you ever fancy a job share, let me know." And that's about as much thought I'd put into it. Anyway, we stayed in contact, and we were both selected for a high potential program with the Cabinet Office. And we decided to team up at that point, both 4 days a week. So we're not the classic 3-day a week job share, but that's how it began.
Brilliant. Good. And both, can you both tell me a little bit about the logistics of how this actually works? You mentioned that you both do 4 days, so there is some crossover. But are you fundamentally the same person on different days, or do you tend to take different strands of work that complement your skills?
So we're absolutely mutually accountable for everything we do, but because we are 4 days a week, it doesn't make sense that we follow each other around to every meeting. So we generally have a kind of a leading and supporting role.
Annelies has
There'll be-
frozen very
Frozen
slightly for
up.
me, but
Oh,
yeah, I'm sure that
can you hear me now?
oh, that's better. Yes,
Yeah, you see, Chris
no
is all
problem.
pixelated on my screen.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah, that's
no worries.
okay. Yeah, yeah, the pixelating comes out in the wash, but
Okay.
but you froze shortly after saying that you're both jointly
Yeah,
accountable. So
okay.
if we maybe say that bit again, and then the editing can iron it out.
Do you want to ask the question again, and then I'll go
Yeah,
from
of
there?
course. Yeah. Um, Please, could you tell me a bit about the logistics of how this actually works? Are you the same person on different days, or do you find that you each take streams of work that best complement your skills and backgrounds?
Yeah, so as I say, Chris and I aren't the classic 3-day a week job share handing over on a Wednesday. Because we're both 4 days a week, it doesn't make sense that we follow each other around 3 days a week when we're together. So we do have we share our responsibilities, but most importantly, we're mutually accountable for everything that we do. So behind the scenes, we always join up. So if one of us isn't around, the other one is always able to cover for them. We have a very strict rule with our people. If one of us says yes, it's a yes from both of us. So really kind of clear for our people that they don't have to keep sharing things with both of us and get both of our approval.
Yeah,
And it's interesting you say
brilliant.
about are we the same person? And
Yeah.
to carry on the story of how it came about, after that we did actually team up, and we had what we enjoy calling the first date, where we spend a long time actually getting to know each other, and particularly how we work and how we think, because diversity of thought is great, and of course you want that and inclusivity, but you don't want too much diversity of thought in a job share partnership. So we quickly discovered we very much share some values and some ways of approaching difficult problems, because delivering big programs and big organizations in government is it's an uncertain environment, it's an ambiguous environment, and you need to have sort of similar risk appetite and things like that. So what you get with us is you'll get different experiences, perhaps different strengths. You get 50 plus years of experience between us of doing this sort of thing, but at our heart, we will approach the problem in basically the same way. And I think that's really important, both for the people in the team in the space agency, but also people outside, that they're not getting a very sort of dissonant view when they hear from each of us. We might say it in different words, but we're saying the same thing basically. And I think that's so important to make this work.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that, and I can feel already a really nice kind of chemistry fit. It feels like a really nice group to be part of, and I'm sure that your colleagues enjoy it too. Do you think there are any other advantages?
Yeah, absolutely. So seldom are these jobs 37 hours a week. They're advertised as 37 hours a week, but they never really are. And so you've got more bandwidth, you've got more capacity. You can genuinely be in two places at one time, which is quite often the case where we actually have to be two very different meetings at the same time. But you have got that resilience because when one of you is on leave, the other one's still around, which is wonderful because it means you can actually switch off knowing that someone else has got your back while you're away. And then that reality of the loneliness of leadership, you're not lonely because you're always in it with someone else. There's always somebody that you can talk to who's going through exactly the same thing. And quite often we find that if one of us is having a low point, the other one's having a high point, so we can kind of lift each other's spirits if things are tough. And so yeah, you've got a friend.
Yeah, sounds good.
I think that point about resilience is really important, and all these sort of senior jobs are really hard, and no one's a hero. At the end of the day, you're going to get buffeted by it, but actually, with two of you, you can be much, much more resilient to those bumps in the road as they come along. And also, the point about switching off is really important. And I think in terms of people's mental well-being, so often when people get burned out with work, it's because they can never switch off. They feel like they have to be on call the whole time. And I found it as a part-time worker in senior positions, it's very difficult to switch off, and I wasn't really realizing the benefits. This is proper switch off because actually when I don't work on a Monday, I have no worries at all about what Annelies is doing. I shut my laptop, I don't look at my phone. And that I think is really important to having that sort of proper foundation of strong mental health and well-being, which you need. You need that well of resilience to really perform in these sort of jobs, especially together. But we are just so much better because there's two of us.
Yeah, definitely. I can see how that would work. So what do you do in your other life? Annalise mentioned that you're a trombone instructor. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I have a sort of second career running, which is about as different to running a space agency as you could probably imagine. But I'm a trombone teacher. I had the opportunity for a sabbatical year, which is probably another conversation to have, but also thoroughly recommendable. And I helped start a youth music charity. And as part of that, I said, why aren't we teaching trombone as a trustee of the charity? And they said, well, nobody can teach it. So well, it can't be that difficult, can it? So it sort of went from there, and that's 10 years ago. So now I teach on a Saturday morning. We have 140 kids at a youth music centre in the town near where we live, and I've got a private music teaching practice as well, which is a bit of a spin-off from that, but attracted other students. So I just do music, and actually on the day that I don't work for the space agency, I'm doing music teaching, and on my Saturdays as well. So people say you only work part-time. I don't. I work much more than full-time. I just do different things with my life on those days.
Yeah, nice. Wow, 140 trombones. I bet you could actually
Oh,
hear them from
that would be
space.
my dream. No, there's not 140 trombones, 140 young musicians, but I'm doing my
Right.
bit for trombone playing in the southwest of England.
Yes, yeah. Oh, fabulous. And what do you do with your additional time, Annalise?
Yeah, so as I said, I didn't put a lot of thought into going 4 days a week. And so a rather rainy, dull, cold November 2021, when I had my first non-working day and found myself doing the ironing, thinking this is a very expensive way to do the ironing. But actually, what works better for me is to, in the busy times, which as a civil servant is typically after Christmas and after the summer, I typically work 5 days a week and then save up those days for the summer holidays because I've got a 14-year-old boy, and it gives me extended time over the summer. So one of the great things about the job share is you don't have to both work 4 days a week. You're 0.8 of a person in time, and there's different ways you can use that time.
Brilliant. That sounds like a good way to live life. You seem both very happy and motivated. Do you think that this has positively impacted your work, Chris? Having this opportunity for the creative side of your personality, do you think that actually then you show up even better for the important role that you play in government?
Oh, completely. I'm very conscious that I'm speaking. We're both chartered engineers, and we're speaking to an engineering institution, but bringing that more creative side to how you approach these challenges, I think is just vital. And very often engineers in particular do find it difficult sometimes to stop being engineers. And we talk a lot about people first leadership and having that appreciation of the human condition and actually what do we actually do? I'm sure my boys think that what I do is get blueprints out and design rockets every day. What we actually do is we talk to people and we listen really well. That's our
Yeah.
job. And I think having that ability to see the human condition and be creative about how to solve problems and work through challenges and just at a much more basic level, there's nothing like a 7-year-old to bring you down to earth. If you're having a bad day and deliver a bad music lesson, they're not polite enough just to sit and listen like we would be in a professional environment. They'll tell you about it. So it keeps me on my toes.
Yes. Yeah. Brilliant. Do you feel that you also gain extra benefits at work from having more chance to live life?
Yeah, and actually, I probably think I should be charging the civil service more for my time because it's natural that when you're in the office, you're back to back meetings, you're going from one meeting to the next, you're not getting that time to kind of reflect and take stock and kind of think bigger picture thoughts. And I find on my non-working day, and Chris gets a barrage of WhatsApp messages as I'm kind of going for a walk in the woods and kind of thinking about life and actually thinking about different ways I could be doing things, achieving kind of some of what we're achieving. So actually, whilst I say I switch off, equally it gives me time to be a bit more kind of creative and reflective about what I'm doing in the day job.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's not so much switching off entirely. Sometimes you take the time to reorganize your filing system in your head and
Exactly.
yeah, come back with a fresh perspective. Yeah. Brilliant. And then how have your colleagues and external partners reacted to the arrangement? Is it something they've been positive about?
Yeah. It takes a little while sometimes to kind of sell why have a job share. That's a really important conversation to have with people about all the benefits of a job share. That they are getting more experience than you're ever going to get in one person. They're getting that resilience because you have got more bandwidth, but also more coverage over the time. And when you bring that diversity of thought, so sometimes you have to kind of make an effort to kind of explain why do it. But actually, once you're in the job and they see actually that they get that breadth, get that uh, additional diversity of thought, that the skill set, we always talk about a Venn diagram of skills that kind of Chris and I have the same skills, but there are some things that he's much stronger in than I am and vice versa. And you can't get that in one person. And so, when people see it and they experience it and got over the kind of the hump of, oh, I'm not sure about a job share, they realise that there's so much benefit to be had.
Yeah, yeah,
Job shares tend to attract job shares, and this is our second role. We worked in the railway business before this, and that was really quite countercultural in what's quite a male-dominated industry. Space has been really welcoming of it, and also we have job share partnerships who work for us and work with us. So I think once you've opened the door and shown this different way, then it tends to attract other people. It's a more receptive environment. We're on a mission, hence like this podcast, to tell people more about it and say yes, it could happen here. Because quite
yeah,
often I hear that it couldn't happen here because, and I'm on a mission to debunk that myth from people.
yeah, yeah. Do you think there's any types of organisation or scenario where it couldn't work?
I think the
No,
short answer is
no.
probably no. It's limited by your imagination and it's limited by a perception about why it might not work. Um, I think in operational environments, could you have a job share airliner captain? Well, that's sort of tricky, although actually that's sort of how they do work as well on long haul flying in terms of crewing. But no, I don't think there is any places. I think a lot of organisations are held back by just not having the confidence because it's not done here. So therefore, it could never happen here. And frankly, and I can say this as a man, a rather sort of macho style approach to senior leadership that to do these sort of jobs, you have to be a hero that's prepared to put 110% of your life, put the rest of your life and personal life on hold to give everything to your job. You're not getting the best out of someone like that. But that is a very prevalent attitude. So it's one thing to talk about job sharing as a primary school teacher in year two, but doing it at this sort of level, at board level, there's a very different attitude. They're both challenging, by the way, not making any judgment there. I'm just saying that the
Mm.
perception of senior leaders doing it is different, and we've had more to overcome, I think, because of the seniority of our position than if we'd been doing it in a more junior way.
Yeah,
I think just to
yeah,
add to that, you often hear, oh, hang on, but you can only hold one person to account. Accountability can only reside in one individual. If you go on Google and look up rail reform, SRO, you'll find that Chris and I were jointly accountable to Parliament for that transformation programme as senior responsible owners.
yeah, yeah. Good. Do you feel as though there are any disadvantages or limitations at all?
I think a disadvantage is that the world out there can feel a bit hostile to people who want to work at something other than the standard working pattern. But I think about the world that our children are growing up into, and the thought that someone's going to embark on a career where they're going to work for, let's face it, probably 50 plus years by the time they get to pension age. And for all of that, they'll turn up from Monday to Friday and work a standard week. I think employers that think that's the future have got something coming, because people are going to want a more flexible approach. So I think creating the environment where employers, so when you advertise a job, why do you always advertise it as 1.0 FTE Monday to Friday? Why don't you say this role could be between zero point 0.6 and 1.6 FTE? We will flex the role to match your skills, experience, and the working pattern you want to do. That would be so much more friendly to people in our situation applying for jobs, because you have that sort of awful, well, when do I tell them I don't want to work full time? Do you do that before you start? Do you do that at the interview? Do you do that when you've got offered the job? And it's unnecessarily hostile to people who want to work flexibly, and the world's got to move on. Employers have got to move on.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think especially in today's world, careers don't necessarily follow a linear path. Life changes as you go through it. You have additional priorities sometimes, and then fewer responsibilities the next, according to phase of life and hobbies that you want to pursue, or second careers that you want to give time to. So I can really understand how this arrangement has genuinely worked for everybody. I did just wonder though, do you ever disagree with each other? And what do you do in that situation?
Of course, we disagree, right? We wouldn't be human if we didn't. I think it does help that our kind of our backgrounds, our personalities, our frames of reference are quite similar. So actually, it doesn't happen that often. We are in that kind of almost married couple. We can finish each other's sentences, which is really great for our staff, right? Because then when they ask one of us the question, we're pretty confident what the other person is going to say. But of course, there are going to be times when we disagree. We try very hard to never do that in front of our people, in front of the teams, in front of stakeholders. We find ways of kind of, usually it's a kind of little Teams message or something saying, let's just discuss this one outside and just kind of park it. But because we've worked together for such a long time, I think it's 4.5 years now, Chris, isn't it? We kind of know how to work together to get to a kind of an agreed outcome.
Yeah, yeah,
The communication
brilliant.
is key. That we spend a lot
Yeah,
of time behind the scenes stitching things together. And Annelies mentioned our two ground rules. The other one is, if you've told one of us, you've told both of us. So it's like
yeah,
that sort of hive mind. Let us do the stitching up behind the scenes, so people never have to tell us both. We
yeah,
will make sure. We've got very good now at time efficiently transferring. So that's a downside, right? There is a slight overhead with that communication, where I suppose in theory we could be doing something else, but it's that dialogue actually about what you're hearing that brings that diversity of thought, and flushes out when we might have different views, and how about this and what about that, and we come to a better, more resilient solution by having talked about it, than if you often we will end up doing something different to what I instinctively might have done on my own, and it's better.
yeah, yeah. And so actually investing a little bit of time in that dialogue can potentially save time later, or save, a mistake being made by making your sense check earlier than if you were just making a decision alone.
Because what I hear a lot
Is
of
there
senior
anything?
leaders saying is, I just wish I had the time. I wish I had the time to stop
Yeah,
and think about this. And so often we're making big decisions all the time, and so often we're making it on incomplete information. So actually, it really does help make better decisions. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do, is make
yeah,
those decisions and make them in the best
yeah,
possible way. So I think it really does. I don't see it as an inefficiency. I see it as enriching of the decision-making process.
Yeah, yes. Do you think there are any other ground rules? If there's anybody listening who's thinking about job sharing and interested in embarking on this path, are there any other ground rules that you think they should really think about at the starting point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chris talked about the first date. We had a very, very long lunch, and investing that time at the outset, as you would do in any, if you were going to move in with another person, or if you were going to set up a company with another person, you wouldn't do it just kind of on a kind of, oh, they want a job share, I want a job share, let's do it. Really think about what you're entering into, because you are absolutely mutually accountable together. And so kind of things to think about are, do you want to be performance managed together or separately? Because if you performance managed separately, you're actually putting in competition with each other. If you performance manage together, then you're 100% incentivized to work as a team. But then if one of you's not as good as the other, then you're gonna your career is dependent on the other person. Where are you in your stage for your career? Is one of you looking for promotion? The other one's quite happy where they are. What's your kind of risk tolerance? What's your personality type? How do you deal? What do you like at your best? What do you like at your worst? Really take that time to get to know each other, because it's a big commitment, and it's hugely worthwhile, but it's got to be with the right person.
Yeah, yes, yes, I can sense that. And I think actually being accountable to each other is in itself a motivating factor, because you don't want to let the other side down.
No, and you have
Yeah.
that crisis of confidence moment. I mean,
Mhm.
there's sometimes I'm sitting in meetings going, God, I don't know why they've invited me, because Chris knows what he's talking about, but I don't. And I'm sure that it's vice versa as well. So there are times when you kind of think, oh God, I hope I'm not letting my other half of the relationship down.
But
Yeah,
actually, that
yeah,
that ability to think like that, and so often, again, senior leaders feel they have to be the hero. They have to know everything. They have to be the all-seeing eye and the all-thinking brain of the organisation. No, that's not right. You get over it. Accept that you're incomplete in your experience set, your approach, and so on. And actually, really embracing that, and job sharing. You must work like that, because this relationship just wouldn't work if we weren't like that. And I wish more people in senior positions found the opportunity to think in a slightly different way about things, and not um, pile the responsibility all upon themselves to make this decision. Yeah, sometimes someone's got to carry the can, right? But actually, what you want to do is make really good decisions.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And any can weighs less if you carry it together.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's been a fascinating discussion, and I've really enjoyed hearing about this arrangement, and I feel very inspired, and I'm sure that others will too. Are there any final pieces of advice that you would give, either to individuals thinking about making a job share request, or employers that have received one?
Yes. So I'm going to tackle one of the elephants in the room. So we're a male-female
Yeah,
job share. And
yeah,
that's brought a really interesting dynamic to it. And it's certainly allowed me to have my eyes opened and my ears open to the world of work as experienced by a female. And I will call it out. There were times where Annelies is given a much harder time than I am. And that's purely down to gender. So we have to keep on that. But now I'm super sensitized to it. So what I'd say to let me start with the people, the employees. Talk about it, say that you want to do this, challenge your employer. What I'd say to the employers is open your mind. Have people like us come into your organisation and talk to you about it and what it actually means. Don't say it can't happen here, and particularly don't say that to the men, because so often job sharing is seen as okay because women come back from maternity leave and they do it in HR and stuff. Having men do it in real high profile leadership positions is so much more of a barrier. And I know a lot of men who won't even talk about it because they fear the reaction that will get from their employer, which is somehow you're a lesser man or you're not committed even by asking the question, and people are scared to even answer it. So to the employers, create that psychologically safe environment where people can talk about this stuff.
yeah, brilliant. Is there anything that you would add, Annalise?
I just say give it a go. It's not a
Yeah.
one-way street. If you give it a go and actually it turns out it's not for you, that's okay. But just give it a try.
Yeah, it sounds good. And I think the piece about visibility is so important because it's much easier to be something that you can already see. So thank you very much for being pioneers and for taking this time to share your experience with me today. It's really appreciated and I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure others will too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.